Something old, Stirling Castle, formed an alliance with something new, the PruTour, and it resulted in something red. A leader's jersey for Britain's #1 rider, Chris Boardman, after he stormed the prologue to win by 2 seconds. After a night of relaxation, the Whittle rider has had a chance to savour his first win for 10 months and reflect on how hard it will be to defend.
Yes, it is, and I think we have to talk a little bit realistically now. There's an awful lot of time boasters here. We've got a sprinter, Hankapi, right up there, and for him it's ideal. So it's also going to be a difficult race to control with very small teams, 6-man teams. So it's going to be an interesting race. I think the best that my team can hope for now is that we slip one of my teammates into this jersey, probably the likes of Stuart O'Grady, who's a good sprinter and can climb a little bit, and I can then give my best to help him do that, and that really will be the best, most likely scenario for us.
Well, Chris mentioned Stuart O'Grady there, and he is poised in 5th place after the opener, 11 seconds back. In 2nd place is the American George Hincapi. He's a good sprinter who will try today to take the lead. So welcome to stage 1 of the PruTour, the UK's premier cycle race, and today we're in Edinburgh, Scotland's capital city. And this beautiful city bathed in sunshine to see the riders on the way, home of course of the famous Edinburgh tattoo. The riders assembling it within the grounds of Edinburgh Castle. This is the route they now face. They fall south now, over Carter Bar, down into England, and racing into the finish at Newcastle with 3 small circuits to complete. 107 riders making the start. The one man not on the start line, overnight he was sick, Sébastien Medon of France, who rides for the Festina team. Beautiful Firth of 4th, and there's the weather, Paul.
Excellent racing conditions for the riders, 18 degrees Celsius, and the blue sky fighting its way through to bathe down upon the riders.
So the field all together. At 42 kilometres, the attacks began. Eros Poli, a former world and Olympic champion on Chris Boardman's GAN team, was clear.
At 88 kilometres, Poli was still in the front over Carter Bar, the first king of the mountains of the day and the first leader in that competition.
And as we went into England, it was goodbye to the fine service of the Scottish police as they gave way now to the English police that will take this race all the way south. At 90 kilometres covered, 3 riders came up towards Eros Poli: David Mackenzie of Australia, Brian Smith of Scotland and Matthew Postle of Wales.
At 95 kilometres, it all came back together. One big field boring down upon the English countryside and looking for a wonderful scenery.
And there are those who have given up valued time to see the PruTour go by. The beautiful yellow gorse reflects the high ground the riders are now approaching. The next big obstacle will be the climb of Winter's Gibbet, 118 kilometres done. For once, the riders were staying all together. This stage had a sting in the tail. Onto the climb of Winter's Gibbet, and this was a long one, and the attacks were about to start. But for the moment, Paul, the race was still huddled all together. No one seemingly interested in launching an attack.
Certainly not, but you can see Eros Poli, the big man who launched the first attack there, but a crash has gone down at the back of the field.
And the rider who was the faller, Thomas Bush, one of the young Danish amateur riders. His teammate who was waiting for him there, Jakob Nielsen. And he wasn't the only faller of the day either. There were a number of small crashes. Thankfully, nobody hurt. Rob Hales was another faller for the Bright Voice team. He had a long chase to rejoin the main field.
Well, these kind of crashes always happen when you come up towards a climb like this, Phil, because everybody's taking a risk to ride near the front.
And everybody keeping an eye too on the GAN team, and the red jersey of Chris Boardman also at the head of the field. And down in the centre of the bunch, the former Australian amateur champion and winner of the Tour of Tasmania, Alan Yaquani, is a faller. And miraculously, the field all ride around him.
Amazing. I don't really know why he went down there, Phil, because he looked to be riding very safely near the front of the pack in about 5th or 6th position. There is a problem with his main machine, though, but if we can have another look here, it looks, in fact, as if he touched the wheel of a rider in front and he just went over very easily indeed, but he was the only man to come down. Although 1 or 2 other riders behind were slowed, there was no main incident.
So lucky for all concerned, the race was going very slowly, a lack of concentration perhaps, and the field basically will be back together as soon as Alan can get himself back on the road. He'll feel a little bit embarrassed by the fall, no doubt, but the race now continuing on the climb of Winter's Gibbet, and approaching that 118 kilometres point. And clearly, Paul, they're all very nervous because nobody seems willing to attack.
Certainly not. There's an awful long way to go to the finish, but just looking at the back of the main field there, one or two riders starting to get tailed off, and Chris Boardman on the right-hand side in the red leader's jersey looking very confident. He's got a lot of teammates at the front here. In the red helmet for Gann there in the middle is Stuart O'Grady, and you can see he's riding very comfortably, and coming down the outside, one of the other Gann riders is going clear.
And it looks like Jens Voigt, who is the German member of the French Gann team, and he's now trying to launch an attack here as he goes up. He's being joined on the left of our picture by David McKenzie of Australia, who's been going very well in the mountains so far today, and it looks as though in all 3 riders clear.
Certainly does. Gann very aggressive. In fact, I thought they might have ridden a much more defensive race this afternoon, but you can see, Phil, they're out on the attack. They want to get a group clear to make sure that all those sprint bonuses along the way don't fall to somebody else, and they can try and keep the jersey with their man who's actually leading at the moment, Chris Boardman.
Well, McKenzie looking over his shoulder there as he was trying to get something going, because he wants these points at the top of the mountain. He had 8 points off the previous climb. If he gets these points, then he will go into an unassailable lead in the King of the Mountains competition. But at the moment, that is not the way it's going to be, because this is Graziano Recinella of the Mobile Vetta team, the Italian team who came in at the 12th hour of the race, Paul, because they caught a late invitation.
They'd hoped to ride the Tour of Italy, so obviously very fresh and very prepared to race well here in the PruTour. But you can see O'Grady's in the front group already, and this attack is causing serious damage at the back of the main field.
It certainly has, Paul, because this is Paul Wilkes here, the England team, going off the back of the race at the moment, and a number of riders from the home countries are in trouble at the minute. Now, looking down from the helicopter here, you can see the crowd on top of the climb here of Winter's Gibbet, and the race itself is really stringing out down that mountain. So the pressure has gone on, I think, really for the first time today. This is O'Grady on the front now.
Well, in fact, Jens Voigt has disappeared from that group. He was originally here at the start of a major change. O'Grady, Baranowski, McKenzie and Recinella. But you can see, Phil, further down, the pressure that's on at the front here is really splitting the group into 4 or 5 different unities.
Well, 4 riders here, and that dangerous man, Baranowski, has gone out front again. O'Grady is guarding the race here for Chris Boardman, while I think Baranowski is looking after George Hincapie on his US Postal team. Let's have a look down from the helicopter at the gap now, and this race is in signs of panic for the first time. There are at least 3 bunches of riders there, and there are many more stragglers behind that. Back up to the front, and this is Baranowski.
An excellent rider for the US Postal Service team, the champion of Poland in the individual time trial, and currently lying 3rd place in the overall standings.
So a dangerous man indeed, and Stuart O'Grady will be well aware of that as he rides alongside him here. O'Grady, perhaps the man for the red jersey by the end of this stage, if it works out on the small time bonuses. We still have 2 special sprints near the end, of which he will be hunting for seconds there, and of course a 10-second bonus for the first man to cross the line in Newcastle. So it could all swing around, Paul.
It certainly couldn't. This is a very difficult part of the course, because although it's not really a difficult climb, it's being made more difficult by the fact the wind is coming across from the left-hand side of the road, and that's what's causing the main field to split up as much as it is doing. And you can see a lot of these riders still trying to put the pressure on, because they still have not got much of a gap over the main field, and they're trying to keep the pace high. McKenzie has been in lots of breakaways so far. He's got a chance sitting in 4th position here just to look over his shoulder and see the main field is already quite a long way behind.
Well, now he's getting up to the summit, and he wants the points at the top of the King of the Mountains here, because there are 10 points on offer for the winner. McKenzie has a great sprint, and he's not wasting any of that today. So McKenzie gets maximum points at the top of this climb, so he can add 10 points there to the 2nd place of Carter Bar, which means he'll be the new leader in the King of the Mountains, whatever happens on the last climb of the day. There's the result. A 3rd place rider, Graziano Recinella, flying the flag there for Italy. Overall, 18 points for McKenzie. O'Grady now has 10, and so there's an 8-point gap there, with 1 more small climb to come on this stage. Well, they're easing on the way down, and there's a group coming up. Will they get caught? See you in a moment. From the 4th to the Tyne, this is where the PruTour is now headed, to Newcastle. and the riders have come over the top of Carter Bar and are now making their way into the big city itself. The story so far at 153 kilometres, the 4 leaders were joined by others. There are now 19 riders in the lead as they sprint for the time bonuses here at Meldon. The green jersey of George Hincapie looking for the bonus, but he's beaten by Stuart O'Grady. 3 seconds for O'Grady, 2 seconds for George Hincapie, which means, Paul, he is now equal on time with Chris Boardman.
Yes, but at 169 kilometres covered, another sprint point, and let out this time by Yaroslav Ekimov. The green jersey there of George Hincapie needs this to take the overall lead, but Boardman's teammate coming up the inside there, Stuart O'Grady, a great sprinter, takes maximum 3 seconds, but again 2 seconds for George Hincapie, who's now the new leader on the road.
So, as we approach Newcastle and the 3 finishing circuits, George Hincapie in the green points jersey has converted his 2 seconds deficit this morning to Boardman to a 2 seconds advantage, and there's still a 10-second bonus for the winner. And Boardman, Paul, is right on the front of this group.
He certainly is in the red jersey there. You can see him in second place and right on the wheel of his own teammate Magnus Baxter. They're certainly trying to set something up, but they're getting a lot of pressure from the US Postal Service.
And this is Tyler Hamilton having a go now, and I'm not surprised, Paul, they're going to do this. They're going to try and weaken the Gant team, and in particular Chris Boardman. But look at this. Boardman, the man who admits he has poor form, is the man now doing the chasing down of this rider from the US Postal.
He's certainly doing a lot of work. In fact, I think now he certainly believes that his own teammate Stuart O'Grady has the chance of victory.
I agree, because O'Grady is the rider in white behind the red jersey of Chris Boardman. Neil Stevens is in front of Chris Boardman. He's on the rival Festina team as they come under the banner here now with 1 circuit to go. The last time check we had on the main field, by the way, they were over 4 minutes behind, and I can't think of anybody who has thoughts of winning the PruTour not being in this lead group.
All the big names are here. All the big names are in that leading group of 19 riders who left. But, you know, on the circuit here around Newcastle, 1 or 2 riders have been splintered off the back. And I think we're down to around about 12 men in the leading group at the moment. And John Tanner, who rides for the Bright Voice team, he's well out of the back at the moment. But he does have a teammate in this group, Chris Newton.
Well, Chris Newton has made the decision here, and remember, the home-based riders do have a little difficulty against the top pros. Here's what Paul was talking about. John Tanner is the rider on the left of our picture. A select group here of some 5 riders who've lost contact now with that leading group, which was 19.
One of the early favourites too there in 3rd position, Yaroslav Ekimov, the champion of Russia, coming over the line. So you can just see how much pressure has been put on in that leading group now.
Well, once this breakaway did get together coming off the hills, they really did move, and it looks as though Neil Stevens is going to have a go now. The man that took a very similar opportunity like this a year ago in the Tour de France, which resulted in his first stage victory in that event.
A great victory. I think every professional rider was one on the start line the following day, congratulating Neil Stevens with that victory of his, because it was a brilliant one. Today he's trying exactly the same tactic, hoping that everyone will watch each other here, because there is a cat and mouse race going on between Gant and between the US Postal Service.
And knowing Neil Stevens, Paul, he's such a crafty rider. He knows he can profit by this because they're watching each other. And of course, it's in Chris Boardman's favour to allow somebody like Stevens to grab that 10-second time bonus, and then O'Grady can take second, and with it the yellow jersey. Because as we speak, at this moment, the new race leader of this event is the rider in the green jersey, George Hincapie, by a scant 2 seconds. 10, 6 and 4 seconds for the first 3 men home.
Certainly, I think, in fact, Chris Boardman has completely thought about O'Grady, because his no jersey, who's doing the chase. This is the main field there. You can see on the front there in the tartan shorts riding for Scotland, Brian Smith. But they certainly, I think, Phil, have resigned this afternoon. All they want to do is get to the finish.
I think you're absolutely right. Brian has been in the action early on today, but he wasn't there when the big split came. In fact, all of the amateur nations seem to have missed out largely in this move today, particularly the home countries. They didn't get a man up there at all. And so now we go back to the leader on the road here. Neil Stevens looking over his shoulder. Well, I was going to say he had a nice gap, Paul, but it looks as though he's going to have company. But the big breakaway is beginning to split up.
It certainly is. This is Chris Newton riding for the Bright Voice team. He's putting a lot of pressure on, trying to stay in contact, but you can just see the speed. In fact, it looks, in fact, as Stevens has been caught there by his own teammate. Now, this is Laurent Lefebvre, the young French rider, 2nd year as a professional, who's countered us straight away, but doing a lot of work behind there in the pink jersey, the red jersey of the leader of the race, Chris Boardman, really riding like a madman.
But a classic 1-2 by Festina. As soon as Lefebvre saw Stevens was being caught, he went immediately. But Chris is very, very alert right now and vigilant. He had a great win in the prologue yesterday, but quite frankly, we did not expect to see him in the thick of the action today like this. He read the breakaway well, and he's still taking part in the front. Now, Laurent Lefebvre, a man who only turned professional last year, looks as though he's going to try and solo to the finish.
He certainly does. He won a stage of the Tour of Chile last year and held the yellow jersey in that event for 3 days. Now he may well have caught them just at the right time, because we've had attack after attack, and it looks as if the impetus has gone out of that group and everybody is sitting on the wheel of Chris Boardman, waiting for Gann to chase it down.
So Boardman is watching everybody, and the attacks are coming from deep down in the breakaway, and now that's livened things up again, and once more the red jersey of Boardman is beginning to look round now for some help.
It certainly is. You can see now the young rider from France here, second year in the professional ranks. He's opened up a very good gap indeed, Phil. There's no organised chase behind him. Certainly it should come from the US Postal Service and the Gann team, because they are the two big professional teams, the two big rivals. And of course, let's not forget, the man in the US Postal Service, George Hincapie, is the current leader at the moment, so they should try and nail it down. Hincapie, Paul, is desperately trying here to get an easy ride to the finish, because he knows he's got the sprint, although he might be a little worried about the fact it is quite uphill in Grey Street, and he's going to have to time his sprint to perfection. And first of all, they're going to have to bring back this breakaway, because he's giving it just about everything now, young Lefebvre. In fact, one man going clear now. Chris Boardman has been doing so much work at the front, and it appears that he's just ridden off the front of this group. And you can see there Hincapie in the green jersey just following Stuart O'Grady.
I think he's making a mistake, because he expects O'Grady to lead this race out, but O'Grady is going to do absolutely nothing now, because surprise, surprise, Chris Boardman in the leader's jersey is going on the chase back of the man on the road. Well, he's left himself about 2.5 kilometres to go to the finish if he can get up here. But I am amazed that the main field has not reacted.
Well, that is quite remarkable, because Hincapie is the new leader. 2 seconds advantage he has currently over Chris Boardman in the standings, and they've actually just let him tootle off the front. There's the green jersey of Hincapie, and Boardman you can just see going over the horizon. It's going to be a chase right the way down to the finish line.
So Hincapie is going to have to say to his US Postal teammates in that breakaway to start working on the front of that group. They've got to bring this rider back, but more importantly, they need to bring back Chris Boardman. And look at this, Paul, up ahead now. We are beginning to lap riders here on this circuit.
We certainly are. This has been a very difficult circuit around Newcastle here. 3 laps they've done of this course, and a very hilly one indeed, and technical as they go through the car park here. You can see Boardman is closing down all of the time, but not quickly enough, I think.
Well, this is amazing, because here we have the red jersey of Chris Boardman. There are 3 time bonuses on the line, 10 seconds, 6 seconds and 4 seconds. On a day when we expected Chris Boardman to lose the lead, he could actually get a bonus and increase it, and nobody would have said that.
Not even Chris Boardman. At the start of the stage this morning, he said himself he wasn't too worried about the overall standings. He was going to try and help his own teammate, Stuart O'Grady. He wanted O'Grady to get into the breakaways. That's what he's done, and now he's riding a defensive role. And in fact, the man at the front, Laurent Lefebvre, is slowly starting to pull away. He's recovering a little bit on the flatter part of the course.
Well, this would be a great ride by Lefebvre if he can pull this one off, because when a young professional gets a win in a big international stage race, all the big teams start to sit up and take notice. He hit him right with terrific teamwork, which Neil Stevens started, and Lefebvre is now set to finish here. This is the nice, very fast descent down to the quayside in Newcastle upon Tyne. Then we will go along the quays, turn left up Grey Street. It is a hard climb at the end of more than 200 kilometres, even to these guys, but he's almost home and safe here, and Chris Boardman is desperate behind him.
He certainly is. There was the flag, 1 kilometre remaining for Laurent Lefebvre at the front here. Now he's got a chance just to recover a little bit before he turns left up into Grey Street, and Boardman still at around about 50 metres off his back wheel, struggling with all of his might to catch the Frenchman before they start the duo climb up to the finish line.
Well, Boardman, I don't think he can believe this. He's just looked round to see where everybody is, and they are not, to my knowledge, chasing him right. They're chasing him down now. Can he get up? Now, let's get back to the group. Here, US Postal have got the orders now. They've got to bring the green jersey to Boardman and try and get Hincapie to beat him in the sprint. And, you know, the uphill finish is going to be crucial now, because once they hit it, it's a long way to the line.
It certainly is. There's a big fight at the front here. These two men trying to get back into contention. Boardman hasn't quite made it, you know, as they come into the left-hand turn. Now it's going to tilt upwards all the way to the finish line. Boardman seems to be slowing down just a little bit. And now, Phil, there's not very much more than 500 metres to go. US Postal Service, well, I think they've missed out.
Well, Lefebvre has made the move of this race, and I don't know if you can hear the crowd here, but they are yelling Boardman's name. They are lifting him him as well, because Bourman is shutting him down inside of the line. Chris Bourman is going to convert this day, and completely impossible. He is catching Lefebvre, who is slowing dramatically. Listen to the crowd. Chris Bourman is going to get his first road race victory for 4 years, Paul, since 1994, when he won a stage of the Dauphiné Libéré in France, his only other professional road race win. And look at them coming up too. Lefebvre's not going to even be second now. That's Andre Korf who's going to get second. Bourman gets the win. Absolutely judge, and I bet you Chris Bourman cannot believe that, and neither will George Hincapie, because he watched the wrong man. He watched Stuart O'Grady, and that is O'Grady now saying to Chris Bourman, well done, mate, that was superb. He has increased his overall lead in the PruTour with that great ride. And this is how it happened, and if the crowd ever played their part, they certainly did just here, because they were shouting Chris Bourman's name, they were dragging him up Grey Street. You have to feel sorry for Lefebvre. He was completely spent, but now Chris Bourman was going for the line. He could now see the line. He took one look back to make sure they weren't coming back to him, and then all he had to do was clap and wave and say, I have won. And there's the result. Andre Korf was the rider who got second place. Stuart O'Grady was right there, and so too was George Hincapie. Further down the list, 9th for Neil Stevens. Eros Polly was 50th. He was an attacker today. Yates 54th.
Well, Chris, a big surprise there, because it's been a big fight all day for a few seconds, and you came out with a great win at the end.
Yeah, I think in 5 years it's my second win on a road stage. So I think it's called law of averages. But obviously I was motivated today. I was right up the front. Felt pretty good actually for the first time in a long time, and I made sure I covered the moves. As soon as we came into the circuit, I spotted the place to attack, but I didn't really dream that I was going to be given the opportunity. Just a small descent just before it kicks up a little bit, and I hit him with full speed when everyone was stopped dead at the bottom, and obviously it was just enough. I had to use surprise because I just don't have the jump at the moment, and luckily everything just went my way.
And Chris Bourman pleased a lot of people today, and overall he now leads this race by 9 seconds over Hincapie. His teammate O'Grady is up to 3rd. Laurent Lefebvre is up into 4th place. Further down, Ekimov, a pre-race favourite, is only 15th, and Sean Yates still in there in 27th place. Claire Salmon of Prudential passing over a beautiful piece of water for Crystal. A Festina watch and £1,000 was his reward today, but more importantly, he still leads this race overall, and that means a lot to Chris Bourman. So Chris Bourman continues to confound us all. He really is finding his form in this event. This is great stuff. Now it's off for stage 2, over to Gateshead and down to York, a long day. You know, Chris Bourman now could win this race, and find out with us if he does here on Sky. It was a great atmosphere on the highways today. Keep it coming. Goodbye for now.